What's up, airplane collectors? Welcome to Model Airplane Review. It's your host, Ray. In today's video, I'll be reviewing the Gemini 200 United Airlines Boeing 757-300 in the new livery. This model was released in July of 2023. In this video, I'll talk about the box, then the model itself, and at the end of the video, I'll give my personal opinion about what I think of the model and whether or not I recommend it to the collectors. That being said, here we go. The box is a standard issue Gemini 200 box at 29 centimeters lengthwise and height-wise, and about 12 centimeters wide. I'll show around the box now. So here's the front, and notice that there is a little bit of a scratch on mine. Bottom, right side, top, left side, and here is the back side. Take a moment to read this if you'd like to. Once you open up the box, you get the model fully assembled, painted, and ready to go, a metal display stand, and two configurations for the landing gear, one configuration in the extended position and the other in the retracted position. For the duration of this video, I will keep the model with the landing gear in the extended position, but I will demonstrate what the retracted position covers look like later. The included display stand is a simulated wood display stand made out of metal, and it holds the model pretty well. As you can see, it's pretty balanced, and I recommend using this display stand for this model. You don't need to get another one, unlike some other smaller Gemini 200 models. And here's the model itself. Before I begin my review, I'm going to give you a quick 360. So the fuselage length for this flying pencil is 28 centimeters, wingspan is 19.5 centimeters, and it's about 7 centimeters tall from the ground to the top of the vertical stabilizer. Accurate to 1:200 scale, and definitely long in terms of fuselage length. And of course, that's the signature feature of the 757-300. Oh my god, that landing gear sounds awful. I probably shouldn't be dragging it like this. Starting out my review of the front of the aircraft, here we can see the nose section and the front section of the fuselage. Nose shape looks decent, doesn't look like the best. The nose cone here is just a little bit too pointy, but it's not the worst either. Gemini has done worse in the past, so I won't complain all that much. Cockpit window printing seems to be okay. It might be tilted a little bit downwards. I'll look at the plane from the front later. But aside from that, everything else up here looks pretty good. There's a healthy selection of painted and printed detail. Lots of printed detail in the form of the doors there and the Connecting People Uniting the World logo. Star Alliance logo looks good. Normally, I don't talk about the landing gear in this section, but I'd like you to take your attention to the nose landing gear. You'll see that it is tilted backwards towards the rear of the aircraft. This is accurate to the 757 series. Both the 200 and 300 have this feature on them, and this is replicated quite nicely on this model, so that is an accurate detail. As we move down the fuselage, we have the giant United title, and this is something I'd like to talk about because there have been multiple reports of paint application issues with this United title, and my model is certainly no exception to that. So it's very hard to see. It's worse on some models than others, but right here on the T, you can see paint spidering. So paint application of the blue of the United title really didn't go well. And it's most significant on the T here, and it's really hard to see, but you can't unsee it once you see it. There's some on the N here as well. And also, there is a scratch somewhere on the fuselage here. I can't exactly show it. At this point, you're just going to have to take my word for it. But yeah, there's a giant scratch on the fuselage. Very small things to see and very hard, but definitely surprising. I've never seen this kind of issue from Gemini before. Not that I have very high expectations from them, but this is a new one from them. Anywho, with that out of the way, it looks like we've got some staining on the fuselage there. Yep, we got some staining in the windows here too. So yeah, on the fuselage, paint application and printed details really wasn't too hot on this one. So yeah, I can see a number of other small imperfections. Yep, got more smudges here. Wow, okay, this is a nasty surprise. And here's the big old vertical stabilizer. This looks pretty solid. The United title seems to be the right color, and the color fade from the light blue to the black looks pretty good. No complaints up here. The vertical stabilizer itself is also decently detailed with the molded detail for the rudder. No complaints up here yet. And here's the right side of the vertical stabilizer, and it appears as though part of the vertical stabilizer just chipped off because I can see some bare metal right here. And there is indeed a cavity right here, so part of this chipped off. Yikes. Alright, so now I'm going to move down the right side of the fuselage. Normally I go pretty fast with this, but I'm going to move this rather slowly so you can inspect the surface and look for any issues. Please tell me that's hair. Okay, yeah, that's just a little bit of a hair fragment. But yeah, there was a lot of staining and paint application issues, and I noticed another small imperfection here. Looks like some gray paint chipped onto here, or some of the white paint chipped off. But yeah, lots of staining on that left side. On the right side, let's see what the verdict is here. Looks like we got some inconsistencies with the blue here on the U. You can see some white poking through, so that's kind of messed up. United title here looks a little bit better. Of course, we got another stain right here. Yeah, lots of stains, lots of stains. That's kind of unusual for a Gemini model, but it is what it is, I suppose. All right, moving on to the wings. The wings look a lot better than the fuselage. There's a decent set of details up here. Painted metal on the, or not painted metal, but yeah, reflective paint on the leading edge slats. Decent amount of printed detail here. As the exit rows or the exit arrows look pretty good. And molded detail in the form of the control surfaces, clearly defined, looks pretty solid. So far, it looks pretty good from up here. Oh no, oh no. Okay, so on the right side, however, very hard to see, but we got some blue staining on here. You can see a blue stain right there. Very small, but I definitely just noticed that. Ouch, looks like some of the paint from the winglet might have gotten onto there somehow. Bottom of the wing isn't really all that special, just no printed detail down here, just painted and molded. And looks like part of the light here was painted incompletely as well. You can kind of see there's a lot of white poking through. And this is on both sides, by the way, so not sure if that was done intentionally or what happened there. Ironically enough, the winglets themselves actually look really good. You can see the clearly defined shape here of the top of the winglet. This is one of the selling points for me. I love winglet details, and yeah, very sharp there. So at least they did good on the winglets, but everything else is starting to look a little bit questionable here, if you ask me. All right, taking it back a moment to the rear of the plane. This looks good here, the horizontal stabilizers, these look good. There's a very small antenna right next to the APU, also looks pretty good. Doesn't seem like it's loose or anything, placement seems decent. APU itself, it's got a hole for the exhaust, that's pretty nice to see. What is that? Okay, looks like a little bit of inconsistencies with the application of the dark blue line here. Nothing too noticeable. And here's the bottom. Bottom looks pretty solid, no complaints down here. Here's the left engine. We'll talk about the engines for now. Engines actually look pretty good. You can see the overall profile is good. There's a lot of printed detail in the engines. That's what Gemini does pretty good on the engines. There's printed detail all over, and on the bottom there's even more printed detail. Looks pretty good. Exhaust nozzles look pretty good as well. However, these engines are not without fault. You can see the front silver plate here is it's a little too large for the rest of the engine. I think this is the engine cowling. It's definitely a little too large. There you can see the difference in size there, or difference in diameter. It's kind of messed up. And this left engine, not sure if you can tell, it's loose. Moves a little bit, so it's not coming off, so I'm not going to force it, but it is loose. As for the fan blade details are okay. They do throw in some half-made spinner spirals, and of course the fan blades just don't spin, but at least there's details in there, so I won't complain all that much. Moving on to aerial details, this model features sat domes, antennas, and 3D lights. There's one 3D light at the forward section of the fuselage on the top of the aircraft, two large antennas up here, one in the forward section and one in the rear section, way back here if you can see that. And then there is one sat dome. This sat dome has a gray section painted over it, which is accurate to this aircraft. So at least Gemini did pretty solid here. Get pranked, not exactly. Both antennas are tilted towards the left side of the aircraft. There's the one in the front, and let me focus it, there's the one in the rear. I can bend these back, but this is still kind of irritating to see out of the factory. Down here we've got two antennas and a 3D light. We got a small antenna here. This is like the one that's at the back near the APU, and then we've got this other one. This is the large one at the rear section of the aircraft. And our 3D light is right here, just behind the display stand hole. The landing gear on this aircraft attaches via a system of magnets. At least the main gear does. The nose gear attaches via a foam pad that serves to cause enough friction for the gear to stay in there. So that is a friction-based attachment on the nose landing gear. And at first glance, the landing gear is pretty good. Like I said, the nose gear does have that tilt, which is replicated accurately. The wheels roll smoothly, and it swivels to rotate, which nose gear is pretty solid. Main gears, though, are a completely different story. The wheels do not roll because the wheels are stuck by the landing gear doors. And I will show this later, but on the left landing gear here, it doesn't sit on the ground with all the wheels. I'll explain that better in a little bit. But yeah, these attach via a system of magnets. They're removed relatively easily. And as you heard while I was moving the model earlier, the wheels do not roll, like I said, because they're stuck. Here's the nose gear. I'll just take it out of its bay really quick. There you can see the black foam cushion there, and that's the empty cavity. Here's what the landing gear covers look like for the retracted position, and this is genuinely better than I thought it would be. The main landing gear covers fit with the magnetic system, obviously, and they do require a bit of pushing and shoving to get them to fit into place because the magnetic attraction is relatively weak. But once that happens and you get them fitting in the right spot, they fit very smoothly with the bottom of the aircraft, so that's very good. The thing I was most paranoid about was this nose gear cover, as this is also a friction-based attachment, and it's even more finicky to get in there, but once you do get it in there, it sits in there nice and tight and very smooth with the aircraft. So Gemini did pretty good with the retracted gear covers here. Something kind of funny I noticed is that there's no hole or anything for a probe to get in here to help to remove this cover, right? And all you have to do is just press down there very lightly, and then you can just pull the gear from there. Or the gear cover from there. That's pretty cool. And as promised earlier, here's a view of the front of the aircraft. Here we can inspect engine clearance, wing flex, cockpit window printing, and gear balance. Engine clearance looks good. That's never been a problem for any of Gemini's 757 models. Gear balance actually seems to be mostly symmetrical, and I'd like you to take your attention to the left side landing gear, which is the landing gear on the right side of your screen. I think, yeah. You can see how it's kind of imbalanced there. The rear wheels do not sit well on the ground. I have to mess with the wheels a little bit in order to get them to sit. And you can kind of see the main landing gear are bent outwards a little, just ever so slightly. But gear balance is fine, so that's definitely a surprise. Cockpit window printing is symmetrical. That's a first from Gemini in so long. That's actually something I really like to see. Wing flex is within acceptable margins. It looks good. And I think I don't have anything else to complain or nitpick about up here. And with that comes the conclusion of my review. Now time for my personal opinion and recommendation. Well, there's a lot of imperfections on this model. I will say that. And honestly, I'm not that surprised, but the amount on this one was rather surprising because Gemini recently, in past years, they really haven't been paying that much attention to their quality control. But it's the type of imperfections on this model that surprised me the most because these aren't usually what we see from Gemini. So Gemini did do good on some parts of this model. Like I said, the cockpit window printing, wing flex, gear balance. Usually Gemini screws those up, but on this model it appears as though they did that right. The shapes of the winglets were good, but in getting that right, but this model suffered in paint application and fine detailing. I did find a lot of issues earlier, like the blue paint on the wing. That is definitely not something I do not like to see. Paint spidering on the titles, definitely irritates those of us who are more attentive to the fine details on a model. So, if you want to get this model, get it. That's my recommendation. I recommend it for those who are tolerant to small imperfections, because looking at it from a distance and even at first up close, it's pretty solid. Shapes are good. It's a beautiful plane. Who doesn't love the 757-300? The flying pencil! So yeah, I recommend it. Of course, proceed with caution if you're ordering online. You know, Gemini's quality control is always hit or miss, and this one definitely missed in some parts. And yeah, I have seen that some examples were better than others based on what I've been told by other collectors, but still proceed with caution. Well, that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned for more model airplane reviews. I'm going to try and get out as many as possible before I move out to college. And yeah, that's all I've got for you. Like, comment, and subscribe. Happy collecting. Take care of yourselves. See you later.